Welcome to this premium video tutorial on creating custom question slides in Adobe Captivate 2017. I want to thank you for purchasing this video. Unlike other video tutorials I've created, this course will guide you in the creation of a responsive design interface using fluid boxes and writing advanced actions to perform the various functions of several types of multiple choice questions. I've been creating my own multiple choice questions for Adobe Captivate for several years. You might be working through this video because your project stakeholder has asked for something that isn't available in the default Captivate product. You might simply want to challenge yourself. In either case, this course will help you understand the majority of procedures to create your own advanced actions and design truly unique interactive digital content using Captivate 2017. Let's get started. Upon completion of this online course, you'll be able to recreate the slides you see on your screen. The first is a multiple choice question where there is a single answer. This slide is designed as a knowledge check where the user can keep attempting to answer until they get it right. It uses Adobe Captivate 2017's fluid boxes, so it will demonstrate responsive design across multiple different mobile devices and still display in a predictable fashion. This slide uses three main types of advanced actions. The first is a slide reset advanced action that returns all the items on the page to their default setting. While this advanced action is optional, it is recommended, especially if users will have the option to return to this slide. The second type of advanced action is used on each of the Answer button. The advanced action will select the button, keep track of what has been selected, and deselect all the other buttons on the slide. The third advanced action is associated with the Submit button and is a conditional action, a special type of advanced action that runs more than one set of actions depending on if a condition has been met. The second type of slide you will learn about making is a multiple choice question as well. However, users can select more than one answer. Like before, there's a slide reset action, an advanced action for selecting and keeping track of which answers have been selected. In this case, they can select more than one, and an advanced action for the Submit button as well. In addition, you'll learn how to show, hide, enable, or disable various items on your multiple choice questions until your user has completed certain activities. Once they've successfully completed the activity, the button to move forward is displayed. Let's start by building our slides and ensuring that they're designed with responsive design enabled. Okay, to get started, we're going to click on Responsive Project and create a new responsive project. This will be a new Captivate 2017 responsive project. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the white theme and also select a completely blank slide. So for this project, I need 5 fluid boxes. So we'll click on the fluid box drop-down icon from your toolbar and select vertical and choose the 5 fluid boxes that we'll need. So there's a couple of choices that I need to make with regards to my style tab, and we're going to keep this vertical. If there was a reason you needed to change it, you could certainly do so, but we're going to stick with vertical. We're also going to change the wrap to squeeze in a column, because what I want to have happen is I want to have this stay in this configuration. The percentage can be 100% in this case. And what we're going to do is leave all of the defaults, but I am going to add some padding because I want some space in between my fluid boxes. This is mostly a personal preference, but I do like the effect of having a little bit of white space ensured between all of my individual fluid boxes, my child fluid boxes, if you will. So I'm going to put 50 pixels horizontal, and this will give me a nice margin on either side of my page, and then 10 pixels, and this will space out the individual fluid boxes. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Options tab because white is kind of boring. And we're going to select a fill for the parent fluid box. And in this case, you could do anything you want here, but I've got an image in mind. So I'm going to select Image Fill. And we'll select the fill pattern and choose a custom image. And it's not already in my library, so I'll have to import it. And I've selected this image here. You could make some modifications if you need to. I'm just going to click OK. And this creates a nice background that I can use. I can also change the opacity if I want it to be a little lighter in appearance, but I think this will be fine for what I want to do. Now, for this particular project, I want to maintain control of all navigational elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Shift F11 on my keyboard, and that's going to open up the skin editor. And this is where you can turn on or off and customize your playback controls. In this case, I don't actually want to show playback controls, so I'm just going to uncheck that option from here. While we're in this window, I can click on the Borders tab and actually change the HTML background. And I recommend this because this will give your e-learning project a really nice look within a variety of different browsers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to select one of the colors that's in that background image that I'm using, so that when you open this project in a browser, you won't necessarily be able to see where the browser window begins and the project ends. So it'll blend in quite nicely. Click there. And now I can close the skin editor. So now we're going to start building the basics of this slide. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the first fluid box. Now I have this reserved in mind for a title. And I'm just going to use text captions for this. So I'm going to click on text and then choose text caption. And it will create a default text caption using one of the styles that are built into Adobe Captivate. I'm just going to change this to a caption type that is just transparent. And I'm going to paste in my title. And we're going to change the font to be a little bit larger. Let's bump this up to, say, about right there. I'm going to change the font color to white. And I think we're going to go with maybe bold italic, just to give it a unique look. Now I'm going to select my second fluid box, and this I have earmarked for the question stem, or the question itself. So again, I'm going to use a text caption, and we'll paste in the text that I have for that. And we'll also change that caption type to transparent. And we'll change the font color to white. And I think we'll make this about 30 points. I'm also going to change the alignment, and we'll go left aligned on that and top align so that it remains tight. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create some of our answers. And you can do this a number of different ways. I think in this case, though, I'm going to create a smart shape. And I'm going to do one answer for starters and make sure that's in the appropriate fluid box. There it is. I'm going to uncheck maintain aspect ratio because I actually want this to go the full width of this box. And we're going to change some of the style options here. We'll make it a white background. We're going to have it 100% opacity. And we'll type in the first answer. In this case, it just happens to be the correct answer, but it could be any of them. And in this case, it's Justin Trudeau is the correct answer. And let's change some things about it. Let's first of all change the color to black. We'll change the font size to, I'm going to say 25. That should be good. And I think what we'll do at this point is we'll deal with turning this into a button. So we're going to use this as a button. And now let's go into state view and set up what our alternate states will look like. So the default state will be white with the black text. The rollover, let's go with a gray color. And then maybe change the font to white. And the down state will have maybe a slightly darker gray, also white text. And I'm going to add an additional state. I'm going to add a state here. Now, of course, in Adobe Captivate 2017, the default state that it wishes to create when you wish to add a state is the inbuilt state of visited. In this case, I want a custom state, and I'm going to call this selected. And this will be my own state. And you'll see why this is important later. Now for my selected state, I'm going to change the color to, let's go with green for fun. And make the text, I think white works well. Now my recommendation is now that you've built this button with all of its multiple states, you're going to want to save it as its own unique style. That way you can reuse the style again later without having to go through all of those steps that you just witnessed me do. So using the menu item that's right next to style name here, we're going to create a new style, and you can call this whatever you like. I'm just going to call this white button. Click OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this so I have a total of 4 buttons. And let's just relabel these buttons so that they are the distractors for this particular question. One of the first wrong answers is Stephen Harper. Next we have Thomas Mulcair. And the final incorrect answer in this case will be Elizabeth May. These are all political leaders. Justin Trudeau is the correct answer, as he was the Prime Minister in 2015. This layout, though, doesn't really work for me, so I'm going to go back to my fluid boxes, and I'm going to select the third fluid box, the third child level fluid box. And what we're going to do is we're going to change some of the settings here. So we want to make sure that this is set up to be vertical, and we're going to squeeze into a column so that they're all on top of one another. And of course, we're going to give this a little more space, I think is important here. So for example, I don't need as much space for my title. So let's go back to Fluid Box Selector and reduce the title. And we'll reduce the question. And knowing what I'm going to put down in these lower fluid boxes, I think it's safe to say I can reduce the size of these items as well. And I'll get into what those are going to be for shortly. So at this point here, what we want to do as well with our fluid box number 3, or child fluid box 3, I'm going to add some additional padding here because I want, of course, some extra space between these items to make it very clear that they are 4 separate buttons. So I'm going to use the vertical padding, and I'm just going to use my mouse scroll button to scroll up until I'm satisfied with the space between each item. That looks good there, about 8 pixels. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to create a new object, and this is also going to be a multi-state object, but it isn't going to be a button. In this case here, I'm just going to use a shape, and I'm going to select a rectangle, and I'll place it inside that particular fluid box. Let's select that item. I'm going to uncheck maintain aspect ratio because I actually want this item to fill this particular fluid box. And let's start to build some multi-state objects for this particular item. This is going to be a feedback caption. And the purpose of making it a multi-state object is that each multi-state will represent a different feedback depending on how the user has answered this question. So the first thing we're going to do, the default state, is going to be completely transparent or 0% opacity, and there will be no outline. So I'm just going to get rid of the stroke, make that 0. And now, of course, I can go into State View and create the alternate states for that. So let's click New State, and we'll call this one Correct. And what we're going to do is we're going to change that to a light green color. We'll make it, again, we'll make it completely 100% opacity. And we can use the same green color if we wish to put an outline around it. And I'm going to paste in the following text. We're going to modify that text a bit. We'll make the font size, say about 25, and we'll change the color to black. So that's going to be the feedback we'll see when the user gets this question correct. It'll say, correct, Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister of Canada in 2015. So probably the easiest way to make additional states is to duplicate this one and make some small changes. So we'll start off with incorrect 1. And I think we'll choose a dark red or burgundy, if you will. And we'll change the color to white to contrast that. But obviously we need to change the message, so I'll just paste in what I have in mind for when the user selects Stephen Harper. That is not the correct answer. So I'll duplicate this state once more, and we'll call this incorrect 2. And we'll change the message slightly to say Thomas Mulcair is not the correct answer. Duplicate once more. Incorrect 3. And like before, we'll change that answer to reflect the third incorrect choice. So we have our 3 incorrect answers. We have our correct answer. We have our default state, which is blank. No one will see anything. We're going to need one more. We're going to create an incomplete message as well, in case someone tries to hit submit without making any choice whatsoever. So we'll just duplicate this state here, and we will call this incomplete. And for this one, I'm going to change the color. I'm going to go with a sort of an amber, perhaps, maybe a light amber color. And we'll change the text to black for this one here. And the message will change it to, you must make a selection before proceeding. So I'm pretty happy with that. Those are all now in place. I can exit that state. It'll return back to the normal, which is completely transparent state. And now we can start building our buttons in Fluid Box number 5. And I'm going to actually do 2 different types of buttons. I'm going to start off with a button that's going to be a little bit different than this white button, because I'm going to have a back and a reset button, which is not going to be the main focus of these navigation controls. The main focus will be submit and next, but I'm going to make those look a little different. So let's start off by creating a new smart shape. And I'll place this down there in the fluid box. Again, we're going to uncheck maintain aspect ratio. Even though I'm going to add additional buttons to this particular fluid box, I do want to have it fill as much space as possible. So this first button is going to be a back button, and it will always appear on the slide, so it won't be hidden or anything like that. And we'll just we'll match the text formatting here to this. So we'll make that 25. I think a gray is appropriate here, maybe a lighter gray than that. We're going to make it 100% opacity, and we'll use the same gray for the outline. We're going to use this as a button, so we'll check off use as button, and let's go into state view so we can design what our rollover effect will look like. Maybe we'll make it a little darker. And change the text to be white. And for the down state, we'll go completely black. And also change the text to white. So that takes care of our back button. Let's save this back button as a new style so that we can use it again in the future. So under style name, we're going to create new style, and we'll just call this gray button. So I'm going to duplicate this because I'm going to need another button. And of course, I don't like the layout of this particular, the way these buttons are changing here. So I'm going to make one change to that last fluid box. And I'm going to take off the wrap to next row and change that to squeeze into a row. And I'm also going to add some padding as well. Let's say 15 and 20, just to give those buttons a little space. So this next button here is actually going to become a reset button. And I'm going to duplicate this again, except this time I'm going to call this button submit. And we're going to change its style because I want it to stand out from the gray buttons. So I'm going to make this one a white button. And I'm going to duplicate it once more and create a next button. So you can also play with your fluid box spacing again. You might decide that that's not enough room for the buttons along the bottom, so you can maybe bump that up, make a few changes to the spacing, and so on. So I think we're pretty good there. We have all the elements that we need to create our fluid box. A couple of things that more housekeeping issues that you might want to keep in mind as you, of course, resize this project to different devices. You may want to check off Enable Uniform Text Scaling and choose a minimum font size. I'm okay with the 14, but I do know that I'll probably need to shrink things down for the sake of the title and the question itself. So that's a good thing to check off. Before we start getting into building our advanced actions to create the functionality behind this multiple choice question slide, we do want to take care of some small housekeeping issues. The first thing I like to do as sort of a best practice is make sure that all of my objects have a proper name. Starting with this slide, we can call this question 1. That might be useful later when you're creating a table of contents. The title, we'll call this title. And spaces in the slide properties panel label will get replaced with underscores. So title underscore question 01. And stem underscore question 01. And we can give each of our answer buttons. So answer button 01 question 1. And I'm going to copy this because I'm going to reuse that formatting. And we'll apply the same thing here, except we'll change button 1 to button 2. And the same thing here. It almost doesn't really matter what you choose, as long as you choose something that you'll be able to easily recognize later when you're creating your advanced actions. So a little bit of extra work now will save you a whole lot of work later. So there we go. So all of our buttons have the proper labels. We're going to make sure our back button, question 1, reset button, question 1, submit button, question 1, and lastly, our next button, so now all of our objects have proper names, and they'll be easily found when we're creating advanced actions to either show or hide various objects and so on. Sometimes what happens when you're working on a slide, you might extend the length of that slide. And many objects' default is to simply appear for 3 seconds. So one of the other best practices that I like to do is to make sure that I extend all of the objects on my slide to the end of the slide, unless there's a reason for it to disappear before the end of the slide. You can use your timing panel to select display for rest of slide for any of these objects. And if you are a keyboard shortcut person, you can use Control E to extend any of these objects to the end of the slide. And that might save you a little bit of time. So now all of my objects are set to display for the rest of the slide. They all have proper names. You'll notice I have quite a few interactive elements, buttons if you will, that all have pauses on it. As a general rule of thumb, the only buttons I like to have pauses on are navigation controls that take you outside of the current slide. So in the case of my answer buttons, I'm going to select all 4 of those, and I'm going to uncheck pause after 1.5 seconds so that there is no pause associated with them. The reason for this is that when you have a pause on a button, hitting it a second time will unpause the project and continue with the rest of that slide. I don't want that action to occur when the user makes a second choice or a third choice when trying to see if they can find the correct answer to this question. The other buttons I don't want to have a pause on are my reset button and my submit button, again, because those might get hit more than one time. The back button's okay because it's going to simply take you to the previous slide, and the next button, it will take you to the slide after this. Now, the default appearance of my next button, I actually don't want it to appear unless the user has answered this question correctly. So what I can do is I can click on the visible and output icon, which is next to the label for the properties panel for that particular item. So just click on that and you'll get a red line through it indicating that this item is not visible in output. One last bit of housekeeping I'm going to take care of. In preparation of making my advanced actions, I'm going to need to keep track of which button a user has pressed. And the easiest way to do that is to use a variable. A variable is simply a container that keeps track of information, and you can store values in those containers. So to create a variable here, I'm going to go to my project drop-down menu and select variables. This will open up the variables window. And from here, I can add new variables as I need them. So I'm going to select Add New. And one of the naming conventions for variables that is often used is to start with v underscore to denote that this is a variable, and then we can give it a name. Answer 1, question 1. I'm just going to copy that because I'm going to use that naming convention for the other 3 copies of this variable. I'm going to give it an initial value of 0. Hit save, add new. We'll just change that to answer 2, question 1, 0, save, add new, answer 3, again an initial value of 0, answer 4, and once more an initial value of 0. Hit save, close, and now we're going to be ready to start building some of our advanced actions. In the previous lesson, I forgot to give my invisible feedback caption a name, like all the other objects, so I've gone ahead and given it the name feedback underscore question underscore 01. So now we're ready to build our first set of advanced actions. These advanced actions are very similar to one another, and their purpose is to store a value in the variables that we created in the previous lesson and change the appearance of the answer button that has been selected. So first of all, because they are so similar with one another, I'm going to select all of the answer buttons at the same time here. And we'll go to the Actions tab of our Properties panel and change this to Execute Advanced Actions. And we don't have any advanced actions as of yet, so I will click on the Advanced Actions icon to bring that window up now. I'm going to go ahead and give this advanced action a name. It's going to be answer 1 underscore question 1. The first thing we need to do is we need to change the state of our answer buttons. So we'll select change state of answer button 1. Currently it's normal. We're going to make it selected. Change state of answer button 2, in this case to normal. Change state of answer button 3 to normal. And one last one, change state of answer button 4 to normal. In addition, we need to assign a value to the variable in question. So in this case here, we're going to choose the action assign. We're going to choose our variable that we created before, variable underscore answer 1, question 1, and we're going to change that to a literal value of 1. The reason being is we're going to keep track of the fact that we've clicked on the first answer, but we're also going to ensure that the other answer variables have been set to a value of 0 if they're not already. And one last one here, assign v underscore answer 4, question 1, also with a literal value of 0. One last thing we're going to do is we're going to change the state of our feedback caption back to normal, which, if you recall, is completely transparent to our end user. I'm going to save this as an action, and I'm going to close this window. So I'm going to select answer 2, and you can see that it's pointing to answer 1's advanced action right now. We're going to duplicate that and make a couple of small changes to accommodate the slightly different circumstances of answer 2. So I'm going to select the second answer. I'm going to click on my advanced action icon. Very first thing we're going to do is we're going to duplicate and make another copy of this advanced action so that we can edit it, modify it to accommodate the selection of answer 2. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to correct the name here, the action name, so that it says action 2 underscore question 1. We're going to change the state of answer button 1 back to normal. We're going to change the state of answer button 2 to selected. We're going to assign the variable associated with question 1 a literal value of 0, and assign the variable associated with answer 2 a value of 1. Everything else will remain the same. We'll update this action, hit OK, and hit close. And of course, make sure that the button associated with the advanced action for answer 2 is pointed, in fact, for that correct script. We'll make the similar change to button 3. Again, don't forget to duplicate the action. Let's update the name. We'll change the state of button 1 back to normal, and in this case we'll change the state of button 3 to selected. We'll change the variable associated with answer 1 to the literal value of 0, and change the variable associated with answer 3, the literal value of 1. We'll update that action, click OK, and close, and make sure, of course, that's pointed at the correct advanced action. And now we'll choose our fourth and final button. Again, duplicate the existing advanced action. And we'll make sure that that is pointing at the right name there. We'll change this back to normal. Make the fourth button selected. Assign the variable associated with answer 1 with 0. And then change the variable for answer 4 with a value of 1. Update that action, click OK, close, and again, make sure that's pointing at the right advanced action. So let's test this out. That should work perfectly fine. We'll do a preview project to see what that looks like. So let's try clicking on each button one by one and seeing if it updates the button to reflect that it's selected. Justin Trudeau, Stephen Harper, Thomas Mulcair, Elizabeth May. All seems to work as expected. The next thing that we need to do is we need to set up the advanced action that's going to be used to submit the answer and find out how our users have done. So the first thing we need to do is we need to select the Submit button and change its on success action to execute advanced actions. And we're going to create a new advanced action. So we're going to click on the advanced action icon, and this will bring up our advanced action window. We need to create a new advanced action. It defaults to one of the previously existing advanced actions. So we're going to create a new action, and we're going to give it a name. We'll call this submit underscore question 1. Now, in this particular case, this is an advanced action that requires a condition to be met first. So we're going to check off the conditional tab, and we're first going to check for answer 1. So we're going to look at the variable associated with answer 1. We're going to say if the variable v underscore answer 1 is equal to the literal value 0, 1, or just 1. In other words, Has answer 1 been selected? If so, we're going to do a few things here. The very first thing we want to do is disable all the buttons so that the user cannot select them anymore. So we'll select Disable from the Actions drop-down menu here, and we'll choose Answer, Button 1, Question 1, Disable, Button 2, Button 3, and Button 4. We're going to change the state of our feedback message feedback question 1 to, in this case, correct, because this is the correct answer. And at this point, we no longer need the submit button. So in fact, we're going to hide the submit button. And we're also going to hide the reset button. But we are going to show the next button, which will allow the user to continue with the rest of this project. Now that's what I would call our first decision point. And let's give that decision point a name. We'll just call it answer 1. But there are other possibilities that could occur as well. So let's take a look at what the possibility or the decision-making process will be if in fact the user has selected answer 2. So again, we can, just like the first one, we can give this one a name. We'll call it answer 2. And this also is a conditional action. So if the variable associated with answer 2 is equal to the literal value of 1, in other words, the user has selected the second answer, we're just going to change the state of the feedback question to the incorrect feedback number 1. And that's it for answer 2. Now we're going to make something similar for answer 3. Same thing, it's a conditional tab. And if the variable associated with answer 3 is equal to the literal value of 1, we're going to change the state of our feedback message to show incorrect number 2. And we're going to add another decision point. And this one will be answer 4. And once again, a conditional action. So if the variable answer 4 question 1 is equal to the literal value of 1, change the state of feedback question 1 to incorrect 3. So we have all our feedback for all the wrong answers plus the correct answer. What if the user doesn't put any answer in at all? Well, what we'll do is we'll actually create a new decision in this case here, and this one will be different. This will be called incomplete. So if the variable, and this time we're going to check the value of all of them, is equal to the literal value of 0, and the variable answer 2 is equal to the literal value of 0. And I think you might be seeing where I'm going with this now. Answer 3 is equal to the literal value of 0. And once more, variable v underscore answer 4 is equal to 0. In other words, none of the answers have been selected. We're going to change the state of our feedback message to incomplete. So we'll update this action, click OK, and click Close. So now that we've finished that, let's make sure our Submit button is pointing at the correct advanced action. That's Submit Question 1. And let's do a preview of this project and see if it works as expected. So let's first of all try submitting with nothing selected and see what happens. It says you must make a selection before proceeding. Very clever. So let's try choosing a wrong answer. Incorrect. Elizabeth May is not the correct answer. We'll try Stephen Harper. Notice that when I clicked another item, the feedback item disappeared. That's part of the advanced action that's here. Incorrect. Stephen Harper is not the correct answer. Let's try Justin Trudeau. Correct. Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister of Canada in 2015. And of course, now I could click Next and proceed with the rest of the project. Now, depending on how you're going to use this slide, one possibility is to use it as a knowledge check. And if your users are going to revisit this slide, perhaps return to it at a later time as they complete the e-learning course, you may want to create a reset advanced action. Now, I'm going to create a reset advanced action. I'm going to use it in two different places. I'm going to use it on this reset button that you see here, allowing users to reset the slide if they're already on it. But also, we're going to add it to the on-enter action of the slide. So if, let's say, for example, a user moves forward from the slide and then clicks their back button and returns to it, I want it to reset back to the way it originally was. So we're going to select on enter, execute advanced action, and we're going to create a new advanced action, and we're going to call it reset question 1. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is basically undo everything that the slide has done. So we're going to change the state of all of our answer buttons. We'll start off with that. Change state of answer button 1 back to normal. Change state of answer button number 2, again back to normal. Number 3, normal. And number 4, back to normal. So that'll return our buttons, even if one has been left selected, back to normal. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to reassign our variables back to 0. So we'll assign v underscore answer 1 to the literal value of 0. Assign v underscore answer 2 back to the literal value of 0. Answer 3, 0, and don't forget answer 4, literal value of 0. Remember, we've hidden the submit button and shown the hide button. So let's return those back to the way they were. So we're going to hide our next button, show our submit button, show our reset button. We'll need to change our feedback back to normal. And because we've disabled the buttons, we're going to need to enable them as well. So I'm going to select Enable, button 1, Enable, button 2. And of course, as you can see, we've kind of run out of room. So I'm going to create a few extra lines here at the bottom so that we have those where we need them. Enable, button 3, and enable, button 4. So I'm going to save this as an action. Click OK. And now hit close. And of course, we're going to make sure that our onEnter advanced action is pointing at the reset question 1 script. And we'll do the same thing for our reset button here. We're going to go to the Actions tab and execute advanced actions and point that at the reset question 1 script as well. So let's do a preview of this now. We'll see how that works. We'll be able to test it out by using this reset button here. So let's preview this project. So I could make a selection here and hit submit. And then of course at any time I can use that reset button to return everything back to normal. Now you might be wondering, how do we take the same slide and make it a multiple choice question that allows users to select more than one answer and indeed have multiple correct answers all at once? Using the same slide, I'll show you. I've already gone ahead and changed the question and the answers. I've removed the previous advanced actions, and I've updated the feedback caption, but have kept the same variables to keep track of which items we've selected. Let me first show you the revised feedback caption. So I'm going to select that here and click on State View and talk about some of the differences. So we still have our transparent, completely invisible caption that users won't be able to see at all. We have our correct message, which in this case is correct. All of these cities are located in Canada, except Anchorage, Alaska, USA. In this case here, I only have one incorrect feedback caption. And the reason for that is that with 4 answers, and any combination of them being correct or incorrect, the number of possibilities would be too immense for me to create feedback captions for all of those possibilities. So I've kept it kind of generic in this case. And I still have my incomplete caption for those that try to hit submit without making a selection whatsoever. So let's exit the state view and return here. And we're going to start by building our new advanced actions for each one of the answer buttons. So first of all, let's select Yellowknife. We'll go to our Actions tab on the Properties panel, and on success, we'll execute advanced actions, and we'll create a new advanced action. And I'm going to call this Answer 01. This is a conditional action. And we're going to first of all check the value of the variable associated with the first button. So we're going to select a variable. In this case, it's going to be v underscore answer 1 question 1. We'll check to see if it's equal to the literal value of 0, which it should be if you're starting out. And we're going to assign a new value to that same variable. In this case, we'll update it to have a value of 1. We're going to change the state of our answer button 1 to selected to indicate that the user has clicked on it. And as a precaution, we're going to return the feedback state back to normal in case the user has previously made another selection. So change state, feedback, question 5 in this case, back to normal here. Now we can reuse much of this code in the else portion of this if-then action. The reason being is that we're going to basically make a decision. So if the button is not clicked, run this stuff. If the button is already clicked, we'll do the stuff in the else section. But it's very similar. So I'm going to select all of this, copy this, go down to the else area, and with the first line selected, just hit the paste icon, and we'll just make some changes. So here in this case, we're going to assign the variable with a value, in this case, not of 1, but of 0. We're going to change the state of the answer 1 button to normal because it's already been selected, and we're clicking it again, and we're going to unselect it. And this doesn't change because we're going to continue to change the state of the feedback question 5 caption to normal in all cases. So I'm going to save this as an action, click OK, and I can now click close. Make sure, of course, that your on success execute advanced action is pointing at the correct advanced action, and now we'll make our additional 3 advanced actions. Starting with anchorage, execute advanced action, and we'll start off, of course, with a copy or a duplicate of answer 1. So hit the duplicate action, and we'll just give this a new name. We'll call it answer 2. We'll update this to work with the variable associated with answer 2 instead of answer 1. Same thing, we'll update this to be answer 2. And we'll make sure that this is pointing at the button for answer 2. And we're going to change that to selected. Feedback stays the same. And we'll make similar changes to the else statement here. So again, v underscore answer 2. And the second answer button back to normal in this case. So I'm going to update this action, click OK, click close. So now I have 2 copies of the same advanced action, one for the first button, one for the second button. But don't forget to make sure that the second button is pointing at the newly created answer 2 advanced action. Now on to answer 3. Execute advanced action, duplicate the existing advanced action that's there. We'll change the name to answer 3. And once again, we'll update the variable associated with this particular question answer. And here as well, we'll update the which button is being selected. And don't forget to go down to the else section and do the same thing here. And the same thing for the button. In this case, back to normal. Update this action, click OK, close, and again, don't forget to update the advanced action in the properties panel. Now finally, we have our last button, our last answer. For Surrey, British Columbia, we'll go into execute advanced actions and duplicate answer 1 so that we can create answer 4. Just make sure all this extraneous text is gone. We'll again point this to the correct variable. In this case now, the last and final variable for this particular question. Update it here as well. And make sure this is pointing at the right button. Selected. And don't forget your else statements. The fourth button, back to normal, update action, click OK, click close, and again, make sure it's pointing at the correct advanced action. So let's test this out. We'll do the submit a little bit later. I just want to make sure that my selection buttons are going to work as expected. So we'll preview this project. So far, so good. So let's try clicking Yellowknife. Selected. If I click it again, it goes back to unselected. Same thing for Anchorage, Beaver Creek. Everything is working as expected. Perfect. Now the last step in creating a multiple choice, multiple action question slide is to create the advanced actions associated with the submit button. So let's get started here. So I'm going to click on my submit button, which currently is set for no action, and we will go to execute advanced actions, and we'll click on the advanced actions icon, and that will bring up one of our advanced actions, but we're going to create a new one from scratch. And we'll call this submit. And this will be a conditional action. And it's also a conditional action that will have two different decision points or two different decisions on these tabs that you see here. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't always do this, but a best practice is probably to label all your decisions so you know what each one is doing. I'm going to call this one correct. And we're going to put in the conditions under which we'll run the following actions. So we're going to start off with our variables that we've been using for each answer. So we're going to say if the variable v underscore question 1 or answer 1 question 1 is equal to the literal value of 1, and this will be different if your answers have a different combination that are correct. In this case here, my situation is that answer 1, 3, and 4 all need to have a value of 1, and answer 2 needs to have a value of 0 for this question to be correct. So I need to validate each of my 4 possible answers. So variable v underscore answer 2 is equal to the literal value of 0. V underscore answer 3 is equal to the literal value of 1. And lastly, V underscore answer 4 is equal to also 1. Now, of course, there's room for 4 different if conditions here. You do have the opportunity, like you've probably seen me do before, to insert additional lines. So if you happen to be creating a multiple choice question where there are 5 answers or 6 answers, you'll need to validate those additional, answer 5 and answer 6. Just insert the additional lines that you need. So if everything is correct, in other words, I've got all the combinations correct, I'm going to do a few things here. Like before, I'm going to disable my buttons. So button 1, button 2, because once they're correct, I don't want them to change their mind. Okay, I'm going to change the state of the feedback caption to correct. I'm going to show the next button, but I'm going to hide the submit button. I'm also going to hide the reset button. And in this case, I want to have an else statement as well. So if it's not correct, we'll assume that it's incorrect. So my else statement will be to simply change the state of our feedback to incorrect. So that works for correct and incorrect. Now we need to make an additional decision that we'll call incomplete. So I'll just call this incomplete. And this will also be a conditional action. And we'll be looking at those same variables again. If variable answer 1 is equal to the literal value of 0, answer 2 also 0, answer 3 0, and answer 4 is 0. So in other words, if the user has not clicked on any of the buttons or has clicked on the buttons and then clicked again to put them back to 0, we want to change the state of our feedback caption to display incomplete. So we'll save this as an action. We'll click OK, and we'll hit close, and make sure that our submit button is pointing at the submit advanced action. So let's test this out. We'll preview this project. Okay, so let's test this out and see if it works. First of all, let's make no selection, see what happens when I just hit submit. Great, I get the message. You must make a selection before proceeding. That's my incomplete script working. And let's choose all of the answers, which isn't correct, and hit submit. Yeah, so we get our incorrect message. Try again. And now let's unselect Anchorage. The other 3 are Canadian cities. So we'll hit submit. And correct, I got all the cities are located in Canada, except Anchorage, Alaska, USA. And now, of course, I can click Next to proceed with the rest of my project. So what we have are procedures to create a couple of different types of what are essentially knowledge checks. We have a multiple choice single answer question and a multiple choice multi-answer question. But what if you need these custom questions to be a part of a final quiz? Let's take a look at what you would need to change to do that. Let's start with the single answer question. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of my back and my reset buttons. And the reason for this is that this will be a single attempt quiz type. So they'll have one shot to get the question correct, and they would have to relaunch the course if they wanted to make another attempt. So I'm going to duplicate my next button because I'm actually going to need 2, and you'll see why shortly. You can right click on your next button and just Control D or duplicate. And I'm going to move the submit button to the end of this section or fluid box. One of these next buttons will be the next button that appears if the user gets it incorrect, and the other will be the next button that appears if the user gets it correct. So I'm going to relabel these buttons first of all. The left one will be my incorrect next button. So we'll call it that, incorrect next button. And I'll just say 01 because we're on slide 1. And the other button will be our correct next button. 01 again because we're on slide 1. And what we need to do, because the back button previously functioned as a pause as well, we are going to need to add a pause to my submit button here. And we'll just pause after 1.5 seconds. And I am going to extend the next button pause by half a second. So we'll just say 2 seconds on that. So they will pause slightly later than the submit button. And let's just double check our feedback caption. Again, remember it's a multi-state object. So we'll go into state view from the properties panel. And we're going to change the messages a little bit here. We'll still have correct, but what we're going to say instead is simply click next to continue. We'll have only one incorrect caption, whereas right now I presently have 3, one for each distractor. So we'll just say incorrect, click next to continue. And I'll delete these other states because I will no longer need them. And of course, our incomplete state is still fully acceptable. So let's exit the state. The one thing we'll need to do with our correct next button is we're going to need to give it a value. So under actions, we'll include in quiz and assign a points value to it, say 10 points. So now we need to modify the advanced action associated with this question slide. So we're going to click on our submit button, go to the actions tab, and next to the submit question 1 script, we're going to click on the advanced action icon, and we're going to make some changes. So first of all, we have 4 different decisions plus an incomplete decision. Answer 2, 3, and 4 decisions are actually no longer needed because we're going to deal with those in a different way. So I'm going to select those and delete those. So let's take a look at the advanced action as it is right now. So first of all, we're confirming that the correct answer has been selected by looking at the variable. We're going to disable the 4 buttons, the 4 answer buttons. We're going to change the state of our feedback message to correct. We're going to hide the submit button. I'm going to get rid of this continue. This continue is there because we deleted the reset button. Previously, we were hiding it in this advanced action. And when you delete an object and reference it in an advanced action, it just changes that line of code or line of script to continue. So I'm going to delete that. And then we're going to show the incorrect next button. That's not right in this case. We're going to need to change that to our correct next button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this because we're going to use most of this in the else portion of this statement here. So I'm going to copy that. We'll go down to the else section and we'll paste that in. There are a couple of small changes that we need to make. We need to change the feedback caption to display an incorrect message. We're still going to hide the submit button, but in this case, we're going to show the incorrect next button, which has no score associated with it. And we'll just update this action, click on OK, and click Close. Now let's take a look at the second type of question that we've created, the multiple answer question. So once again, we're going to delete the back button. We're going to delete the reset button. We'll duplicate the next button. We'll move our submit button to the end of this fluid box. Let's relabel these next buttons. So this will be incorrect next button 02 because this is now slide 2. And this one will be correct. Next button 02. And while we're here, we can assign a score to the correct next button. We'll include this in the quiz and assign a points value. In this case, it's worth a little more because it's a bit more difficult. We'll make this one worth 20 points. Let's take a look at our captions, our feedback captions. We'll probably have to make a change or two there. So again, I'm going to go with very simple statements here. We'll say correct, click, next to continue, as you would expect with a final quiz. We'll change our incorrect caption from try again to incorrect. Click the next button to continue. And again, our incomplete caption is fine the way it is. We'll exit the multi-state view. And now we can take a look at our pauses associated with the next buttons and the submit buttons. So we're going to pause on that submit button. So let's add that. Pause after 1.5 seconds. And in the case of the next buttons, we're going to pause after 2 seconds. Just to ensure that the slide remains paused until the users had a chance to look at the feedback. Now let's take a look at our advanced action. So we'll click on the Submit button, go to the Properties panel, under Actions, and under On Success Execute Advanced Actions, Submit 1. We'll click on the Advanced Actions icon. And like before, there's a Continue button because we got rid of the Reset button, so we'll get rid of that. What we're going to need to do here is just make a few changes, but let's just double check everything. So we're disabling the 4 answer buttons. We're changing the state of our feedback to correct. That's fine. We're going to show, in this case, the correct next button too. So let's get that. And we're hiding the submit button. So let's copy this material here, all of it. So I just highlight all of those items and click copy. We'll go down to our else statement. We can actually delete what's here because we won't need it. And we'll paste in a copy of everything under the if then portion. So we're still going to disable those 4 buttons. We're going to change the state of the feedback this time to incorrect, not correct. We are going to show a next button, but it will be the incorrect button, the one that doesn't have a score assigned to it. And we will hide the submit button. So let's update that action. Click OK and click close. So I think we're pretty good to go here. I've already added my custom quiz results slide. If you'd like to know how to make your own custom quiz results slide, I do have a free tutorial on my YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/paulwilsonlearning and do a search for custom quiz results slide, and that will give you the instructions on how you need to do that. So let's test this out. We'll do a preview of this project. First, I will purposely get everything wrong so we can see what the result is there. So let's choose Stephen Harper, submit, incorrect. So we'll hit next. And I'll choose all the answers because I know that's incorrect. We'll hit submit and next, and that brings us, of course, to our quiz results slide. And unfortunately, as you can see by the disappointment of this gentleman here, we haven't done very well. Let's reload this page, and this time I'll get everything right, and we'll see how that works. So this time we'll choose Justin Trudeau, submit, click next. I'll choose the correct answers now, submit, next. Yay, I got 100%. So there we go. We've come to the end of this video tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and walk away with more knowledge about Adobe Captivate than when you started. I wish to emphasize that what I've shown you in this video today is just one method to achieve your e-learning results. Continue to learn new procedures and incorporate them into what you do. Try new things and feel free to change these procedures to suit your own needs. If you think your organization could benefit with my knowledge and experience, don't hesitate to recommend my free YouTube tutorials to your colleagues at youtube.com/paulwilsonlearning. If your needs are greater than watching an online video, I'm available to consult on your next e-learning project. You can reach out to me through my website at paulwilsonlearning.com. If you know someone else who might benefit with this video course, please don't hesitate to recommend it. Thank you again for purchasing this video.